Why don't we go ahead and begin? We're going to be, as we might be organizing ourselves a little bit as we get going, but my name is Rick Miller, and I'm the Executive Director of Arches, which you heard a little bit of before, and appreciate the opportunity to be here this morning. And we want to talk a little bit in this panel today about sort of that preparation for the transition to college and what we're doing in K-12 to make sure that we're graduating ready to move on to the world of college and career. And so we have three distinguished panelists to talk a little about from their perspective of how we can do this both on a collaborative nature and in one of high expectations for all students across the board. And so I'm going to try to limit my role by just introducing folks, having them talk, and then we'll have some questions later on that we can ask the audience, or I have as well. So I'm going to actually start with Julie Mendoza, who's the Director of Research and Evaluation for Arches, and has been working in the field for years, working with schools and communities and building this college-going culture. And so with that, I'm just going to ask Julie to begin her presentation.
So good morning, everyone. It's an honor and a pleasure to be able to share with you some of the work that my colleague who's in the audience here, Michael Burton, and I had the real privilege of doing for the past 2.5 years. As we all know in this room, California's workforce is projected to need an additional 1 million college graduates by 2025. But to meet this challenge, California must build a college and career pipeline that functions as a seamless transportation highway from preschool to college for all students. Yet decades of research document, as we well know in this room, that schools that serve large proportions of Latinos, African Americans, and low-income students, they do not function as college and career pipelines. Moreover, researchers consistently document that these schools do not send clear signals to students and their families how to prepare for college. This is significant for those of us who know that today, Latinos, African American, and low-income students make up the majority of the students in California schools. In contrast to their white, Asian, and middle-income peers, low-income students and students of color often are the first generation in their family to graduate from high school and to go to college. As such, these students have limited access to social and professional networks that help them with their college and career planning. As a consequence, they are deeply dependent on schools to help them prepare. For this reason, the ICC believes that a complete college and career pipeline must include strategies to help Latinos, African Americans, and low-income students to develop a college-going identity. And I think it's what Greg alluded to earlier, is to really be able to help students find their passions. So the students need to be able to see themselves, and they need to be able to see college as integral to their identity and a valued pathway to a career. So in this presentation, what I'd like to do is share with you a promising strategy that the ICC piloted in 2 El Monte school districts to help middle school students develop a college-going identity in an effort to increase high school and graduation rates in the region. Through a generous grant from the Rosalind Arthur and Gilbert Foundation, the ICC developed a 100-minute California college and career planning workshop designed to give students a head start on their future and to help middle school students build a college-going culture. Help middle schools build a college-going culture. These workshops were part of a larger project funded by the Gilbert Foundation to develop what we call the College Access Information Continuum. It's a project that seeks to create synergies among 3 tools that, in order to deliver a set of comprehensive, student-centered, individualized informational services designed to improve college preparation and college going in the region. Excuse me. The project connects and integrates the Early Commitment to College, Senate Bill 890, CaliforniaColleges.edu, which is the official source of college and career planning in the state, and the University of California's Transcript Evaluation Service into a seamless college access information continuum beginning in middle school. Since 2011, the ICC, in partnership with El Monte educators, helped more than 2,500 students sign the El Monte Pledge online and complete a 100-minute California Colleges workshop. The impact of this counseling intervention was substantial. 95% of the students, the 2,500 middle school students that participated in these counseling workshops, reported that the workshops changed their motivation to plan ahead and prepare for college a lot or some. 96% of these students recommended that these workshops be offered again at their school the following year. The 2-day counseling intervention was designed to take place during the regular school day, and that's really important. It was designed to take place during the school hours in the computer lab that had access to the internet. Middle school principals were asked to identify a course that the entire 8th grade class was enrolled in. This could be English, history, social studies, whatever. Whatever the course was, we would then decide we would go through that department. Principals were told that the workshops would take 2 full 50-minute class periods for 2 consecutive days to maintain the continuity of the intervention. Schools were asked to send Michael Burton, the program manager for student-friendly services, an Excel worksheet that contained every single name of the 8th graders in that cohort, their name, their date of birth, their unique student identifier, their address. And then what Michael would do is he, on his end, would create all the accounts for California colleges prior to the workshops. Then what we would do is we would send the Excel worksheet back to the school with all the student accounts, and we would ask the schools to pull the class rosters that we were going through, the classes that we were going to be using, and match those so that they had all that paperwork and everything ready. So when we arrived, we would be able to have the student rosters, we would have all of the unique student accounts, and we could begin to deliver our presentation and start with the workshops. We also asked that on the day of the workshops that there would be staff who could help and would be there and ready for hands-on, because when Michael and I arrived at the campus, we didn't know where the classrooms were typically, we didn't know where the bathrooms were. There was a whole set of things that we needed hands-on support if there was any problems with the computers or anything like that. We encouraged the middle school principals to send a memo to the teachers to notify them about the workshops, to let them know that they should adjust their lesson plans for that week accordingly. And we provided the principals with a template for this communication. We also thought it was important that the principals notify the parents that the counseling intervention was going to be happening, particularly since we were going to be asking students at the end of day 1 of this workshop to sign an early commitment to go and take the first step to take control of their lives and sign the early commitment to college. So we wanted to make sure that the parents knew. Of course, for those of you working in the school sites, the cost of this communication was important, and so what we asked the schools to do is 2 or 3 days before the workshops, we asked them to send a telecommunication to parents, and we provided them with a sample for that. So in general, the 2-day, the way that the curriculum and the lesson plan was broken down for these 2 days is like this. The first day of the counseling intervention, the first 50 minutes, students arrived in the computer lab and immediately took a pre-intervention survey. The survey was designed to measure students' baseline understanding and knowledge of the key concepts to prepare for college, and their knowledge of an array of resources that they had access to, they and their families had access to, many of which were free and available online. As soon as students completed the survey, they heard a presentation about the benefits of going to the college, the economic returns to the investment of higher ed. We introduced students to the A through G subject requirements, the 4 systems of higher education. We talked to them about ways to pay for college, and we also talked to them about the El Monte Pledge Compact, which is the region's localized version of Senate Bill 890, early commitment to college. After the presentation, we took a few minutes and we asked students to take the first step to log on to their California Colleges .edu account and actually sign the Almonte Pledge Compact online. And we helped students through this process. It was very exciting for the students. And then the last 5 minutes of class, what we did was we kind of previewed what we would be doing the following day, and that is we explained to them that what they would do the following day is they would take a career self-assessment inventory that would help them link their personal interests to their college and career planning. So day 2 was different in this way. Students came to the computer lab and they immediately sat down and started taking a 180 survey, questionnaire. There were 108 questions on this My Interest inventory, again, and that's available free online through California colleges. Now, we only had 50 minutes, and we were pushing kids to get through the 180, the inventory. And as soon as they finished that inventory, and students, I would say almost always, almost always completed the inventory. What we would then give them was a worksheet, and I have samples of this worksheet up here, and I have complete packets that describe the College Access Information Continuum for those of you who are interested. So what we ended up doing then was students would complete this, or we would ask students who had completed their online interest survey to complete this one-page worksheet, and if they had time to complete the second page of this worksheet. So what was interesting is that students rarely were able to get through this first page of this worksheet, but they were so interested in this result. At first they were resistant. There were like 180 questions, and there was just, and Michael and I would assure them this is not, rocket science. There should be no talking. This is your individual blueprint. We try to pump them up and get them excited. So let me tell you a little bit. And then after they completed, or we typically always run short. I can't think of a time where students, the very rare, maybe 2% of the 2,500 were able to complete this, okay? And those were real high-achieving students and had a sense that they were going to be going to college anyway. So this was a familiar exercise or something that they weren't struggling with. So the lessons learned and the challenges and opportunities. I smiled when Greg talked about being ruthlessly honest, because I have to say that Michael and I consistently underestimated what it would take to implement these workshops in the school sites, particularly during the school day, okay? And let me just tell you, it was probably for me one of the most humbling professional experiences I've ever had in my life. And when Michael and I wrote this proposal, I'm not kidding you when I tell you we never intended to be in front of 2,500 kids, middle school students, trying to motivate them to go to college. Michael and I am not kidding you, might as well have been speaking a foreign language, because they had 12 and 13-year-olds had no idea what we were talking about. And we weren't dressed like you see me today. I mean, we had baseball caps on and college gear and stuff. So it was an extraordinary learning experience, because again, but it taught me so much, because it taught me that so often the people who have the tools or the resources up to these, when we're thinking about building systems, we often build these systems disconnected from the folks that are the end users, and we build them without thinking through what are the practical implications for the implementation of these kinds of efforts. So I think the first day, I know Michael and I left the school site feeling like absolute failures. And I went home thinking to myself, how in the world are we ever going to deliver these numbers? What have we done? And the thing that was so interesting is Michael and I were just astounded by the level of resistance. Initially, especially day one, there were staff members in the back of the room with their arms crossed, kind of just like watching us and just not willing to participate or help in any way.
Staff members of the schools.
Staff members of the schools that we were going into. And you know, faculty, administrators, counselors, right? And so, I mean, I was not prepared for that. I thought I was doing a service. I thought I was providing a service. Michael and I were thinking, what in the world is going on here? But I'm not kidding you. People sat in the back, you know, against the wall like this, you know, and I mean, their body language communicated so much. And faculty were really resistant to giving up 100 instructional minutes. And I'm, you know, I'm Pollyanna here thinking, you know, this is going to be fantastic. We're going to like build, you know, we're going to motivate kids. They're going to want to become better students, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, so, but here's the thing. Day 2 of this workshop, in the same spot that we were flattened, I had no voice. Michael and I looked at each other and I said, don't even talk to me. We're out of here. I'm going to bed. And I mean, I was so devastated. You don't even want to know. And but day 2 of this 2-day workshop, I knew that we were onto something when the people that stood against the wall with their arm crossed came up to me and introduced themselves to Michael and myself and said to us, you know what, can we have one of those packets that you're passing out? Because my daughter and my niece need one. And I knew that. I told Michael, we are on to this. This is the kind of information that our students, the students that we care about, Latino, not that we don't care about all students, but the students that this grant was intended to benefit, low income, minority, students of color, this is the information that they don't get. And so the student impact for Michael and I was just an extraordinary surprise. And real quick, I just want to touch on some of those highlights. And one has to do with that consistently, it didn't matter if it was me presenting by myself, Michael presenting, the two of us presenting together. And let me tell you, Michael and I have very different classroom management styles where, you know, you have no idea. We learned about ourselves and whether, or we did it together. Consistently across the board, we would get the same exact responses from students. And it didn't matter if I thought that was the worst presentation I've ever given in my life, or if I thought, boy, I was on, I nailed every single point. It didn't matter. Every single time we got the same kind of feedback from students. The timing, when do you offer this workshop? That also didn't matter. It kind of depends on the school and what the school is trying to accomplish and what they're trying to do. So we got tremendous feedback from the high school staff who were, it happened that we had offered the workshops in one of the schools right before the students the high school counselors were coming to register for them for classes. So like 2 days later, I get a telephone call from the high school district. Now, this is not a unified school district, and I'm told by colleagues it probably wouldn't have mattered if it was. But the high school counselors called me up and they said, what kind of information are you and your colleague giving to students to 8th graders? And you know, I explained to them, and they said, well, you can't do that unless you train us how to do this, because students are coming to these sessions and they know more about this process and these tools than we knew. So so Michael and I were like, we're happy to you know, give you folks you know, training and help you to do this. The other thing was the impact that that these workshops had on this overall school culture. Because we were doing it with a whole cohort of students, the school was saying that there was a completely different buzz on campus. And all of a sudden, there was college talk and career talk on campus. Kids were talking during breaks, during passing periods, during lunchtime about, you know, oh yeah, I, you know, can be an airline pilot. I can be an aerospace engineer. I mean, it was just, and I'm going to make $100,000. Oh yeah, well I'm going to make 175. It was just really, really interesting, right? I mean, it was really something else. And then the student interest and engagement. that astounded me, because as I said, students couldn't get through this workshop. By the end of this, through this worksheet, by the end of the workshops, I started thinking, you know, I'm going to offer the computer lab, since I eat my lunch in here anyway, I'm going to offer kids to come in during the break, come in during lunchtime, or come in after school while I'm cleaning up. I couldn't believe it was packed. Every single time it was packed with students and who were interested in completing the workshop. So in terms of the next steps and the sustainability of this work, the ICC currently is not funded to provide direct services in El Monte, although the stakeholders in the region have said that they want to continue doing this work, and they've asked us for help, particularly around professional development and expanding this work to other schools in El Monte. I'm also thrilled because I get to start next month working with the California Gear Up staff to begin to think about an implementation plan and strategy for how do you begin to roll out these workshops in 46 Gear Up schools throughout the state of California. With regard to professional development and technical assistance, one of the things clearly is you need to figure out how to teach people how to do this work. And we're hopeful that the ICC will receive funding to actually develop high quality short videos, 3 to 5 minute videos to really teach people how to do this. And finally, in terms of program enhancements, I really feel and I'm sure Michael would agree, I mean, this is just the tip of the iceberg. And with, with respect to program enhancements, parents were so interested. When we met with a group of parents, they were so interested in this, and they said, you know, we need to be learning this. We need these workshops for ourselves. And Spanish-speaking parents were saying, so that's another piece, is figuring out how do you have this Spanish component, how do you have an English component, how do you infuse this and these workshops into the parent culture at the school sites. But one of the things that struck me that the parents said was they were so interested in hearing and seeing the students, their child's career self-assessment inventory, because many of them have not graduated. 61% of the parents in ages 25 and older in El Monte have not graduated from high school. 61%. Many of those parents have not graduated from U.S. or entered any U.S. school. So the parents were telling Michael and myself that they simply did not have a language or a framework or a concept to have an informed conversation with their child about their personal passions and their interests. So they said if we could have that, that would be an amazing tool for us to then be able to have conversations. Now remember, these are 12 and 13-year-olds, and the parents were saying to me, my kid speaks English better than I do. They think I don't know anything. They dismiss me. But this would give me a tool to them to be able to be on a level playing field with my child so that I could support the things, their interests and their passions. So with that, I just want to say thank you for your attention, and I'm happy to answer any questions. In closing, I would want to thank the Rosalind Arthur and Gilbert Foundation for their generous support of this project and the El Monte educators who made the project such a success. And I know for Michael and Penny and myself and other members of the ICC, we are eager to collaborate with stakeholders and funders to develop a prototype of the next generation of guidance counseling tools for the state that can reach across the state. And we certainly don't have the monopoly on this. We're learning, and so we're happy to engage in a conversation with all of you if you're interested to learn more. So for those of you who want materials, I'm happy to pass those out. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Julie. Great, so and we'll go through the panel and then we'll open it up to questions for everyone. So let me next turn to Robyn Fisher, who is being our host today, and we thank her for letting us to be in her wonderful office, is also one of the collaborative leads for Arches. She's worked in schools here for years in the East Bay area with a specific focus on African Americans, and I think has a lot to teach us about how to focus on a group of kids and bring them forward. So with that, Robyn, if are you almost ready with her PowerPoint?
Yes, almost ready.
We'll sort of turn to you.
Okay. Take a quick break. Good morning and welcome to RT Fisher Educational Enterprises. I thank you all for being here today. Welcome to our home away from home. I want to say greetings to all my friends and family out there, mentors who are in their space, Shelly Davis, Bobby Brooks, folks from far away, San Diego, sisters from San Diego, appreciate you being here, Sharon Twitty. So I want to thank you all for being in the space. Miss Nina Moore, glad you're here, Alice. People who have been fostering what we're doing in this particular region and in the state of California. I can't stand here without saying thank you to them, and especially Ms. Penny Eckert, who invited me to participate in this work in the way that we are working. What we wanted to talk about today is an effort that we have been working on here in southern Alameda County. In part of what we wanted to do as a collaborative in Arches is really look at how do we increase what it is that we do in the community to a larger number of students. And so what we wanted to do is give you an idea of our historical evolution. RT Fisher and an organization called the Southern Alameda County Alliance of African American Educators. Its founder and president, Bobby Brooks, who is a collaborator with me and a mentor to me, we came together because we were concerned specifically about the African American student achievement rates in Alameda County. We all know Oakland and we all know Berkeley, and we know all very infamous or famous cities in this particular area. But we weren't so familiar with the other counties the other school districts that were part of Alameda County. And the two organizations, we really wanted to begin to look at what was happening to African American children in school districts outside of Oakland. And so we created, with the help of Arches, the Southern Alameda County Regional Educational Alliance. And we have now evolved even further, and we'll talk about what that evolution looks like. But for a few moments, we're going to talk about what we did in southern Alameda County. What exactly is Supriya? And that's what we call ourselves. Well, we're a part of Arches, as Rick mentioned, and some of you may be very familiar with what Arches is, but we took it very seriously. And what it says here is that the goal of Arches is to link every public school in the state into a regional collaborative. And we really wanted to look at improving student achievement and closing the achievement gap between groups of students, as well as significantly expanding access to rigorous coursework with college. We were supposed to just pick one, but we said for the work that we wanted to do, it was all integrated, it was all interrelated, and we couldn't look at it separately. So we began to take that very seriously, and in this particular region, really coalesce a group of folks, a group of community agencies that were serious about looking at issues with respect to African American children. We existed primarily, though, because we found a looming crisis was happening not only in the state of California with the California high school exit exam looming, but also in southern Alameda County. We really wanted to have a better understanding after looking at the data, what was happening specifically to black children with respect to this particular exam. Were our parents aware? Were our children really aware of what was going to happen when this particular test was going to impact whether or not they graduated or not? And we saw as a community that we needed to do something very strategically around how we were going to address this particular issue. Not necessarily just the school district, but as two organizations coming together to begin to shed light on what as a community were we going to do to support our children and their families. So with that, we decided that we were really going to focus on making sure that our children were academically proficient and ready initially for the California high school exit exam. That was the reason why we came together. And we were going to make sure in this particular county that there was outreach and support to African American families. We wanted to ensure that we actually were improving student skill, because if we were talking about really expanding college options, we wanted to make sure that our children were academically prepared. You can't do one without the other. We wanted to make sure, taking lead lead from our partner and mentor, California Gear Up program, how do you talk to the adults? How do we not place blame on the children? How do we not look at the data and say, oh my goodness, those poor children, they can't seem to get it together? How do we look at the teachers? How do we look at the parents? How do we look at the administrators at those school sites? What kind of professional development services do they require so that they could better serve our children? So that we're looking less at the children and more at the adults who are serving our children. You can't see that, but it says our service model is a grassroots, community-centric, culturally relevant, and responsive approach to educational issues. Reason why we started from not a county office of ed. We didn't start from a school district. We started as two community-based organizations. And we said, what can we do to impact a school system? And we felt, because we did have educational backgrounds, we did work with school districts, county offices of eds, colleges and universities, we felt that we had a wealth of information that we could provide to the school system. The purpose of Supriya really was we wanted to engage in meaningful conversations with educators, students, and families. We didn't want to be the folks coming in with our capes on saying, we're here to save you. We know what to do. We said, no, we want to be able to engage in conversations with you about what's going to work best for the students that we're working with. We wanted to see what best practices existed specifically for African American student achievement. We know that there are lots of things that work, but we wanted to know what works for whom and when and what conditions. And so we wanted to be very specific about the work that we were going to do, because we wanted to be able to ultimately develop a plan of action, be able to know that what we were doing was going to improve high school exit exam passage rates. This kind of gives you an idea of who our membership, because we're a part of Arches, we had to be very thoughtful about who our collaborators were going to be and how we were going to work together. Now, since we again were community-based organizations coming together, we had to seek out our university partners, seek out our school district partners, and our private industry partners. And in itself, that was quite a task, being able to build the credibility that we had to build to be able to say we can do this work. Very similar to what Julie said, folks with their arms crossed and looking at us across the room, they were our partners. Who are you exactly? What exactly do you do? What exactly do you have to offer? How is it that you think that you're going to be able to support our children? So we spent a number of years building relationships, building trust around why we thought we would be able to support our children in our schools. Now, this is a question that's come up that I want to make sure that we talk about. We had to ask ourselves, why South County? Why Southern Alameda County? Why not Alameda County as a whole? Why not Oakland in particular? How many, is there anyone here that serves Oakland Unified at this point? Raise your hand high. Well, actually, there's lots of folks that provide direct services to Oakland. And what we found, as my colleague Bobby would say, there's this myth that as soon as you cross the border from Oakland to San Leandro, or that there are no more black people. And what we said is that that's not the case. As a matter of fact, we know, because of our work that we studied and did work with Dr. Teranishi, who did a migration report in California where African Americans are really moving to, that black people are moving from urban centers, and they move east and they move south. And in Southern Alameda County, black people were moving from Oakland into some of our suburban areas, now suburban urban areas, San Leandro, San Lorenzo, Hayward Unified School District. And so what we wanted to do is, as we saw that trend happening not only in Alameda County, it was happening across the state of California. Same thing is happening in Los Angeles with respect to where African American families are moving to. And what happens then when those school districts aren't necessarily prepared for that migration? And that's what we were seeing in Southern Alameda County. We were seeing that there are about 10 cities in Southern Alameda County, about 10 school districts, incredibly highly qualified teaching staffs, a very diverse student population. But what we saw was African American children in these particular districts with the percentage of the number of students that were there, they were disproportionately the numbers of students who were not passing the California high school exit exam and having the most trouble with respect to the California Standards Test, the CST. So we were interested to find out, with these incredible teaching staffs, with the resources that were provided in these particular public school districts, why was it that African American children were persistently and consistently not performing academically? What was happening? So that's the basis of our work, is really to begin to think about how do we work with school districts who weren't necessarily prepared for the African American children and families that migrated into their particular school districts. Again, we need to be honest with ourselves about what this looks like and what this means. And we went to these districts saying, let us come in and work with you to begin to solve and think about how we can solve these issues. So let me just take you into one particular district where we've been really working very closely over the last 7 years. Because again, this is something that is systemic and takes a long time. When we talk about, I've been very involved in my background is in boutique kinds of programs. We do take children on college tours. We do a lot of those types of activities. But what we found is that if we really wanted to make a difference from an academic achievement perspective, we had to be committed for the long haul. We had to be there irrespective of the grant dollars. We had to be there and have a school district say that we will absolutely partner with you. We will let you into our classrooms. We will let you begin to work with our families and our teachers. It had to be a different kind of conversation if we really were going to begin to impact student achievement. So for the last 7 years, we've been working with several school districts, but San Lorenzo Unified School District has really been a partner that has said, we have a problem and we need some assistance. San Lorenzo, and we call it our district now, mirrors regional and national trends. You can't really see this, and I'll make sure that you get this, but there's national trends. There is no staff of color in 44% of schools. 75% of the teaching staff in San Lorenzo Unified School District is white. 40% of inner city teachers transfer within 5 years. In San Lorenzo, high teacher turnover rate in the neediest schools in that particular district. There's turnover, very similar to the national trends. If we look at number 3, 98% of African American children attend public schools. In San Lorenzo, that's the same thing. 80% of children feel good about school in kindergarten, 20% in 5th grade, and only 5% in high school. In San Lorenzo, exactly the same thing. Let's look at number 5. African American children comprise 17% of the student population, but constitute almost 40% of students placed in various categories of special education. In San Lorenzo Unified, African American children comprise 14% of the student population, but constitute almost 20% of students placed in various categories of special education. When we look at number 8, by 2035, children of color will be the majority population. Number 8, San Lorenzo Unified School District exceeds this national trend. So what we wanted to do is begin to say what we're doing in San Lorenzo Unified School District is a mirror of what's happening in the nation and would give us an opportunity to go deep rather than breadth, looking at breadth. We were going to do depth and really get into what was happening in this particular school district for African American children specifically. Unapologetically, we're looking at what needs to happen for African American children so that we could begin to change some of these trends. The district itself was a partner and really was looking at itself from an equity perspective and really looking at its efforts to eliminate race, class, and disability as impediments to academic success. So we were able, because we were partners and able to be a value added to that particular goal, we were able to work very closely with the district to help meet its needs with respect to equity. We started to look at the data of African American students, and they had the lowest percentages in achievement, proficient or advanced level in CST in all grades except for 2, 3, and 8, where special education's percentages of proficiency were lower in 2, 3, and 8. So they had a problem. And they were very honest about, we don't really know why that is. If you look at the demographics of our teachers, if you look at what the resources we have, why is that? And so again, we partnered to begin to really think about how to begin to resolve these issues for Black children. What I want to show you, these graphs that you really can't see. But for the African American and Latino students at grade 2, they were ending the year about 0.5 year below the norm in math. And this gap increased until grade 10, okay, for both groups. And what this analysis indicates that not only is there a gap between ethnic groups, but a widening gap for African American and Latino groups when compared to grade level norms. So what they found in San Lorenzo was the longer they were in school, our children, the worse they were doing. And again, very, very concerned about what those statistics. And what we found in other school districts in Southern Alameda County was that the same thing was happening to African American children. And again, hands in the air, not understanding why. Summary of our findings in our initial piece, because what we wanted to do before we even started to think about solutions, before a strategy was in place, was to really understand what the data was telling us. And our summary told us that students' ethnic, special education, and economic background actually do have impact in their academic experience and performance in this particular district. And if we were going to close this gap in this particular district, we were going to have to do things that across the nation folks are doing. Set high expectations, teach to learning levels of students as indicated on benchmark assessments and really be very clear about what they said, monitor progress, and then most importantly, adjust instruction so that we could take into account the unique needs of the students that we were serving. And that's going to be very important because, as I mentioned, we are a grassroots, culturally relevant and responsive organization, meaning we believe that children have unique needs and come from a variety of backgrounds that we try to have you see in the space that you're in, so that we knew that there was something to the work of Dr. Gloria Lansing-Billings, something to the work of Dr. Ruth Cossey here in Oakland around how children learn and the environments in which they learn. And San Lorenzo said, based on this information, we have to do something different because what we're doing isn't necessarily working for African American children. They said to us, we cannot address these alarming trends alone. And that allowed us to be able to partner. And that's really important too when we talk about building relationships and partnerships. We came together because we both had a need. We wanted to be able to support a school district in a way that they hadn't been supported before, and they were ready for support. They were ready for the help that was there to be provided to them. We had to ask ourselves some tough questions. We couldn't be all things to all people. We had to be very thoughtful about what it is that we could do and how we could support them. And as a collaborative, again, this is not one or two organizations. As a collaborative, we asked these questions to really begin to focus our strategy. We had to think about how are we walking our talk. There's one thing to talk about it. There's one thing to be able to look at the stats. It's one thing to have a great presentation. But were we in the schools every day? Were we walking the talk? And that was the key. We had to be in classrooms. We had to be in parent meetings. We had to be in the meetings that were going to help make decisions with respect to the children and where they were going to be placed. These were all the things that we had to do to be able to walk our talk. The good news is that the district really did take heed to its equity initiatives. They do have monthly professional development opportunities around what is culturally and linguistically responsive teaching. They brought folks in to begin to work with their principals, with their teachers around that. They begin to really understand, because we get asked it all the time, what exactly is a culturally relevant, responsive teaching methodology? What does that look like? Can you show us? What exactly does that mean? And so we said, sure, we'll show you. We began to work with teachers around what does that look like? What does that feel like? How do you do that in a variety of content areas, not just in social studies, not just in language arts, but how do you do that in math and science? We looked at all of the different the equity initiatives and began to work within the context of those initiatives. We expanded access to exemplary programs to provide increased math academic achievement for African American students. We are in the classroom at an elementary school every day. We have African American children for math intervention from 2nd to 5th grade, very similar to ELD. When ELD students are getting their instruction, African American students who require additional support in math are with us with respect to the work that we do, so that we're able to monitor their progress, and we actually are working with them on a daily basis. In their middle schools, we're with their students in both during the school day, working with teachers during the school day, and after school. We worked both with San Lorenzo High School and both of their high schools to begin to think about how do we have this matriculation from elementary to high school. We provided incredibly strong student support services. We again expanded successful programs in all middle and high schools with African American students, with emphasis on post-secondary planning with culturally competent advisors. That was really important. When we talked about Greg talked about near peers. That's important for us to make sure that we had folks that could speak the language of the students, speak the language of their families with respect to the work that they do. And we know that San Lorenzo also has been working with folks to have them think about that, Marcia in particular. Increase the number of supplementary tutoring and mentoring programs that have shown to be effective with African American students. And we've expanded special interventions and services like we mentioned at Hillside. We began to address the special language needs of African American students by providing training for teachers to use English language development strategies to improve language development across all content areas. So again, we began to really dig deep into how to provide the support services to our children to begin to increase their improvement. And we are seeing signs of improvement to end this aspect of what we've been talking about. In 2011, in the number of students for 6th grade who participated in the program with a score of proficient on the math portion of the CST, it decreased, meaning we had more students from 2009 to 2011 increased from basic to proficient and advanced. Same in 7th grade, we had 17% more students increase from not proficient to proficient. In our Hillside Quad Academy, our African American Math Intervention Program, the students based on who come to us are far below basic and below basic, from grades 2 to 5 overall increased from far below basic to one grade level, one quartile above where they were in the 2 years that we've worked with the program thus far. If we look at, again, very specifically at a cohort of students who all were test takers scoring basic or above across the board with respect to the work that we've been doing in the last 3 years with Hillside Academy, in every cohort there has been an increase in the number of students who started at basic and now are proficient and advanced. And so the work that we're doing, we're beginning to start to see that it does make a difference in this particular school district. And we're beginning to figure out what is it that we have to do to replicate that in other elementary schools in the district. So as I mentioned, based on this work that we've doing, we've begun to evolve ourselves. We started as 2 community-based organizations to become an Arches collaborative, and now we have evolved into what's called AREA, a nonprofit, a 501c3 that's an independent entity that begins to really look at African American regional educational efforts. And so we started as 2, moved to 1, and now we've evolved into the African American Regional Educational Alliance to begin to look at these regional issues for African American children and their families in a very systemic and thoughtful way so that we can begin to address and close the achievement gap that is real among African American families. Our goal is to emerge, sustain, and grow a regional collaborative network that is designed to implement innovative educational services targeting the needs of African American children and their families. We do that through a number of initiatives that we work with. One is the Choose College Educational Foundation, where we're raising public awareness around the importance of preparing for college early. We're also working with a program for African American young men called My Brother's Keeper. And we also have a program where we're increasing the number of students who are better prepared to take college entrance exams. My Brother's Keeper is a program that is sponsored primarily. It started with Supriya. It's sponsored through the Mitch K. Poor Foundation. And it really is about making sure that African American young men know the tenets of what it takes to be successful in their academics and for the rest of their lives. Our effort to increase the number of first-generation college-bound students who are successfully prepared to take college entrance exams. We have a program called the Super Saturday program, which allows more people to know more about why it's important, very similar to what it is around the FAFSA. We want students to be as prepared as possible for college entrance exams, and we want to make sure that they have accurate information about what that looks like and what that means. So in a nutshell, that gives you an idea of the type of work that Arches has allowed in the state of California to take place with respect to collaboration, with respect to community building, and with respect to being very focused and unapologetic of working with regional issues and how best to do that. Thank you.
Thanks, Robyn.
She'll move it for you.
Great. Let me finally turn to our final presenter, and we have a substitute, Buffy Tanner, who's the scholarship coordinator for College Options, has joined us this morning, and we're going to load up her PowerPoint.
My director, Lianne, called me yesterday morning sounding horrible on the phone, and I said to her, I don't care how sick you are, I'm going to get you for this. And now I really am, because now I realize that it's videotaped. She owes me. Okay. So I wanted to tell you a little bit about College Options, run briefly through our history, but the really exciting stuff is what's ahead and what we're working on now. So a little bit about College Options in the far north state. We started back in 2003, but we were prepared for this work in 2001 by a study done by a UCLA education faculty member who basically talked to anybody and everybody in the North State and said, what's going on? You have great high schools, you have great students, and yet your students aren't going on to higher education at the same rate as the rest of California. And it was basically an issue of geographic barriers, economic barriers, and cultural barriers. So in 2003, we started with an educational talent search out of UC Davis. UC Davis was a fiscal agent. Started with 5 part-time staff members. And in 2004, we had a number of different partners join us in this work to become College Options. So for those of you unfamiliar with California geography, we are way up against the edge of the north of the state. So if you keep on taking I-5 on up, you're eventually going to hit Sacramento. Keep going for another 2.5 hours, and then you will hit Tehama County, Shasta County, Siskiyou County, and Trinity County. For reference sake, we have 305,000 inhabitants in those 4 counties total. And we have approximately 45,000 K through 12 students. So we're definitely working on a different scale than you are in terms of population, but in terms of geography, a vastly different scale. Most of our area is national forest and a fair amount of agricultural land. Folks are few and far between. We did some calculations, and for not just the 4 counties, but for the 11 counties in the far north of California, we figured out that there are 5 people per square mile. So, fun stuff, trivia. So when we started in 2003 with our UC Davis Educational Talent Search program, we were primarily focused on Shasta County. We were up in Siskiyou County a little bit. We had 6 schools, 3 high schools, 3 middle schools, and a cohort of 600 students. And how many of you are familiar with educational, with TRIO grants? Okay, so very specific funding to do very specific work and nothing else. Our partners were CSU Chico, Simpson University, which is a private school in Redding, College of the Siskiyous, which is a community college, and Shasta College, also a community college, at UC Davis, and then the 2 offices of education in Shasta and Siskiyou County. After we had been around for a very short time, about 6 months, we caught the attention of UC Office of the President because they had done this study, and also a local foundation, the McConnell Foundation. And they said, we like what you're doing. And McConnell Foundation said, here, we'll match your educational talent search grant, which at that time was $200,000 a year. We'll match it with $200,000 a year so that you can expand your services and do what you're doing with your ETS students, but do it for everybody. Like, okay, all right. So we expanded our staff by a few people, and thanks to some really fabulous working relationships in the schools, we started doing whole class presentations and reaching more students than just our educational talent search. So fast forward from 2003 to 2012, we've been blessed with our director, Lianne, who is a fabulous grant writer, and she's very aggressive in writing grants. So the McConnell Foundation has really been a huge blessing because the funding that they provide us allows us a tremendous amount of flexibility to do kind of what we want and to fill in a lot of the gaps. We also recently were funded by the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation to establish No Excuses universities, and I'm going to talk about that in a minute. We have not just the first educational talent search, but now we have 2 more educational talent search. So we have one in Shasta County, one in Siskiyou County, and one in Tehama County. Last year, we were very fortunate to get a Department of Education Gear Up grant, a federal partnership grant, and that really kind of exploded our world. And then the College Access Foundation has also been a tremendous partner in allowing us to move what was previously just college access work to college success work through a scholarship grant for a scholarship program, as well as a collaboration grant with some fabulous people over on the north coast part of the state, and also now with a new grant to do some financial aid strategic work. We also have a grant from one of our local casinos, Indian tribes, the Paskenta tribe, Rolling Hills Casino, and then other community contributors have contributed smaller amounts of money here and there. So we used to look like that, and now we look like this. We have a center in Reading where students and families of all ages can come in and get one-on-one personalized advising and assistance for college preparation, college application, financial aid assistance, scholarship help, anything related to higher education. All of our services are free because of the grant funding. We don't charge for anything. Some of these I'm going to talk in more detail. Our financial aid services are really a huge cornerstone of what we do, and we actually have 2 financial aid specialists that just do financial aid advising and stay on top of policy changes at the federal and the state level and work with our families who have much more complicated situations. We have direct scholarships to students, a large number of community events that serve the entire counties at particular grade levels. We have advisors in the schools in all comprehensive public high schools in Shasta, Siskiyou, and Tehama counties, and we're moving towards that direction in Trinity County as well. We have some K-8 reform going on with No Excuses University, more on that in a second. The Far North State College Access Network collaboration was a CAFC-funded project, and we're working on some work with FAFSA completion and college persistence in the 12 northernmost counties in California. We do campus trips, and then Reach Higher I'm going to talk a little bit more about as well. Does everybody hear me in the back over the air conditioner? Okay. So we went from a handful of partners of K-16 focused on educational partners to now we have expanded the number of educational partners that we have in the 4 different counties we work in, as well as some community partners. The Shasta County Women's Fund, our regional foundation, community foundation, the AVID programs, ROP. Because we're so close to the Oregon border, now Southern Oregon University, which is just over the border in Ashland, is now a partner. So we're going out of state a little bit even. And also, we've started working more and more with local businesses to partner with us in this work. So we do a number of events. This is the Christmas tree slide. I'm going to remember that forever. College fairs, and again, county-wide events at certain grade levels. We actually start with kindergartners, and we have an event called Kinder College Day, which when Lianne first said, we're going to have an event for kindergartners and you're going to put it on, Buffy, and I was like, you're kidding, really? Kindergartners. Number one, it's the cutest event that you will ever attend in your entire life. We have about 1,000 kindergartners come to Simpson University, and it's essentially a mini career fair for kindergartners. And we get the police out there and the National Park Service, and we get doctors and dentists, and everybody dresses up in the uniform that they wear, and they bring the stuff that they use on their during their day at work. And every single station that the students rotate through, they hear over and over, this is what I do, and I had to go to college to learn this. And I had to go to college to learn this. What we didn't really realize when we started Kinder College Day is the impact that it would have with parents, because parents are still actually involved with kindergartners. So parents come along, you get a group of 20 kindergartners, and you get a group of 15 parents along with them. So parents were listening to all of these community members and all of us telling their kids, it's okay to talk to your kids about college now. We had parents coming into our center afterwards saying, I came with my kid to Kinder College Day, and now I think I want to go back to school, or I want to start school. So it's been a great fallout that we didn't really anticipate from that event. The college trips, the scholarships, the center advising, all these various activities that affect individual students. So we have data, because who exists without data? Obviously, our program funds have increased quite a bit, but the workload has increased quite a bit. We've gone from serving 6 schools to 38 schools. Our college application rate has gone from 51% to 92%. This was accomplished. How many of you serve schools where sports are important? So what we decided to do was take that sports competitiveness and translate it into something related to college. So in the fall, we have something called App Attack. And the schools with the senior classes that have the highest percentage of students completing a college application get $500 towards that senior class. And they can use it in whatever way that they want. They can put it towards sober grad, they can turn it into a scholarship, they can do whatever they need to, their senior trip, whatever. It actually turned out to be a little bit too successful, and we have a number of schools. We have the schools broken down into large schools, medium schools, and small schools, because we do have schools that have senior classes of 15 students. And when you've got 15 students, it's pretty easy to get all of them to sit down and fill out an application to the local community college. But when you have schools that have, classes of 325 seniors, that's a little bit trickier. But we've actually had some of our schools, some of our large schools get 100% college application completion. And we've had a number of schools in each category get 100% completion. So we've had some 3- and 4-way ties some year. It's been pretty fun. We also did a competition called FAFSA Frenzy for a number of years, the same idea. Highest percentage of students completing FAFSAs got a financial award. That was when CSAC published data on their website by school, how many FAFSAs were completed. Then that went away in 2008-9, but I hear it's coming back. Is Despina here? Okay, it's a topic for later. All right, okay. All right, my new best friend, man. Okay, all right, we're bringing FAFSA Frenzy back. So our FAFSA completion rate has also gone up substantially. And a lot of that work has to do with Cash for College workshops. Shasta Union High School District, one of our local districts, and Kyle Turner, Associate Superintendent in the back of the room, is here with us today, used to be the regional coordinator for the Far North State. But the grant writer who worked in the district was retiring a couple years, and she was the point person. So we called Kyle and said, what plans do you have is anybody else in the district going to take that on? And he said, I don't think so. And so we said, do you mind if we apply to do that? He said, go for it. So College Options is now the regional lead for the 11 counties in far northern California. And that highly helps with completion rates. A through G completion rates have gone up substantially. When we started in 2003, we had some of our schools, mostly our very remote, very rural schools, that couldn't even offer a complete A through G course pattern. So we worked with schools, online courses. The community colleges have been fabulous, particularly College of the Siskiyous, in video conferencing courses so that students can get their A through G courses completed, and making headway there. And then student enrollment in post-secondary education. Our 2012 numbers we feel very confident about because we've started using National Student Clearinghouse database, and we've supported our districts to sign up for the clearinghouse. Our 2004 data, we're a little bit more hesitant about. It was CPEC data, and CPEC had some issues back then, and a lot of the data, when we realized that CPEC was having issues, we were going with student self-reported surveys. So we feel comfortable about 2012. The number of students and the families that we serve now has just grown exponentially. And we've gone from 5 part-time employees to 34 employees. This time last year, we had 15 employees, and the Gear Up grant changed all that. It's been an exciting year. So where we're going in the future is really exciting because up till now, the college options work has been in tandem with schools, but a lot of what we were doing was really augmenting and supplementing what the regular counseling staff was doing in schools. But we're starting to have more collaboration that's really looking at doing some systemic change, not only in the schools, but also in the communities. 3 years ago, Tehama County launched an initiative by community members, the business community, that was looking at education completion as an economic issue. And they formed a body called Expect More Tehama and approached the schools with this idea of, okay, we see students graduating from high school and going on and getting more education as a benefit to the economic realities of Tehama County. How can we help you encourage students, motivate students? And so they've launched, they have goals, but then they've also launched some initiatives like a college t-shirt drive for every single 8th grader in the county. And they solicit those t-shirts from every community member. They also have done sponsored A through G workshops for all 8th graders in the county. And a lot of times those community members are co-presenting those A through G workshops along with school personnel and with our personnel. Expect More Tehama also came up with the funds that allowed us to move from just Shasta and Siskiyou County into Tehama. They came up with funds to pay one of our advisors to work exclusively in Tehama County, and that happened in 2009. And from then, and the buy-in from schools has allowed us to develop an educational talent search grant there, and then also expand with the Gear Up grant into Tehama County. In Shasta County, we also got some assistance from a slightly different quarter. Shasta County Public Health was doing a lot of work and research into looking at health equity and the impact that education has on health equity. Basically, the higher your level of education, the healthier you are. You have access to health insurance, you have more knowledge about your health, and so on and so forth. So they created a summit called Roots of Our Health, and they invited educators, they invited community members, they invited business leaders to convene together to discuss this issue of what's going on with education and how it's impacting our county on a health level. From that was formed a higher education task force, and from that higher education task force came Reach Higher Shasta, which has really had this enormously galvanizing effect on the schools in the last couple years. It's very exciting. So the main focus of Reach Higher Shasta is to close the gaps of college and career readiness. So the focus, and this is much smaller than we anticipated it being, sorry, focusing on the Common Core, the transition to the new Common Core curriculum that's happening in the state, moving towards an A through D curriculum for all high school students, using common assessments in all schools, in all K-8 and high schools, common staff development, which has been huge, and our county, Shasta County Office of Education has really taken a lead on that. Partnerships with colleges to reduce remediation, and I'm going to touch on this more, a North State promise, and then the big kicker is really galvanizing the community to get the community behind this idea of let's raise expectations for our students together. Don't leave it up to the schools. We're all in this together. So we've been working with Jay Westover from Innovate Ed. I don't know if many of you are familiar with his work, but he's come up to the North State quite a number of times to help us lead some trainings. And when I say us, now I'm really talking about the Reach Higher initiative, and that's Shasta County Office of Education, College Options, Shasta County Public Health, and then all the school districts in Shasta County are buying into this and are actively participating, coming into meetings and then having work groups where they're rolling up their sleeves and getting their hands dirty and doing some serious work. So the work with Jay and Innovate Ed is really taking a look at the assessments for Common Core are coming in 3 years from now. So they've basically been counting backwards mapping and figuring out what do we need to do now to implement and get everybody trained and up to speed on Common Core so that we're ready for those assessments. Okay. So our K through 8 focus with Reach Higher Shasta has had two major areas of emphasis. One is that No Excuses University that I mentioned was funded or is being funded by the Robert Woods Johnson Foundation. That grant was actually made to Shasta County Public Health, and we're a partner in that. How many of you are familiar with No Excuses University? Okay, it's a movement started by Damian Lopez, who was a teacher in the San Diego area, and brand new teacher. This was a few years ago. Brand new teacher, full of fire, was going to go in there, make a difference, and within a couple years felt really burned out and wasn't feeling like he was terribly effective. And really kind of had a revelation one night that the reason that he was feeling burned out was that the school collectively was burned out. And so he sat down and really tried to think about what are the things that make a school successful. And he kind of distills it down into 6 points. One is an adoption of a culture of universal achievement. None of this, well, you know, these kids are really bright, they're going to make it. These kids are going to do okay. Yeah, they'll probably graduate. These kids, you know, we're going to do what we can for them, but, you know, who said, I don't know what we can do. So instead, from the time the kids are kindergartners, say, look at these kids individually and say, this kid, this kid, this kid, all these kids have the capability of going on to higher education, every single one of them, and acting on that at every single step of the way. So that culture of universal achievement looks at the lesson alignments to standards, looks at every aspect of the curriculum, formative assessments as well as summative assessments, really using data to analyze what's happening in the schools, how the students are performing, and then providing interventions when necessary at both a classroom level and an individual student level. Doing family interventions and really talking to the families and incorporating the families as partners in this educational pursuit. And then collaborating with partner institutions. Collaboration is a key part of No Excuses University. One of the fun things about No Excuses University, if you walk into an NEU school, is what you'll see is every single classroom has adopted a different college. They have the students, even in kindergarten, they have the students write to the college, ask them for information, ask them for pennants and banners and posters. So every single classroom is plastered with information about UC Davis or Humboldt State or UC Santa Cruz or Shasta College. And so the students, wherever they walk through the school, are getting this message over and over that college is out there and it's a possibility. So No Excuses University, we had a training in March for over 250 educators, teams of administrators and teachers from our schools in those 4 counties. What was really unique about this training is that normally if your school is interested in being a No Excuses University, you send your team to the No Excuses University Institute, and they have about 4 of these institutes per year. We managed to talk to Damian Lopez and his team, and we said, we've got 250 people that want to do it. Rather than us sending all of these people to you, would you be willing to come to us? And they said yes. This was the first time that they had ever done a regional training for a group of folks. So we had a lot of fun over those 2 days, and the schools are very, very excited about this. Another great example of the collaboration work that's happening at the K-8 level, and our Shasta County Office of Education, Department of Curriculum and Instruction spearheaded this, but there's huge buy-in from the schools, and they were taking a look at 8th grade algebra. And they were finding that the systematic placement of kids in 8th grade algebra really wasn't working, that there were just students that weren't ready. But this school over here was using this assessment tool to figure out if a kid was ready for 8th grade algebra. This school over here was using this assessment, this one, and so on. Got all the schools together, and a math teacher representative from all the 8th grade schools, and said, we need to sit down and find a common assessment for 8th grade algebra readiness, a common assessment for 9th grade algebra readiness, and if a student is not ready for algebra in 8th grade, we need to come up with a common curriculum so that they take that course in 8th grade and then they're ready for algebra in the 9th grade. And so that was a huge amount of work that folks totally bought into and did in just this last year, and that's ready to go this year. At the high school level,
Buffy, we've got
A minute.
oh, okay, alrighty. Talk to me at lunch if you want to hear about high school.
You're between them and lunch.
I am between you and lunch. So sad. Okay, alrighty.
All right, so thank you. So thank you. Before I just want to thank the panel again. I think what was great about this panel was it was very specific, right? We were at the level, at the school, talking about how we can work with kids, and I think that's the most important thing. We did run out a little bit of time. I'm going to turn to Penny. The panel was supposed to eat at the Ritz-Carlton. We've canceled it. We're going to stay and eat with you so we can answer your questions, and we appreciate your time. So if you'll just join me in thanking the panelists again.